Everybody has the ability to record to their computer if you want to record this. If you want to speak, you can use the raise hand button, and I don't know how the format's going to go, but we'll get to you, and you can request to unmute, or I can request you to unmute.
All right. Welcome to everyone. Bruchim Abayim. With great excitement and joy, we're going to present our first major gathering in the discussion of the truth about creation versus evolution. To give some background, we are a group of truth seekers, Mevakshe Hashem and Bali Teshuvah, who have come together every week for over a year. At first, we went through the entire Pirkei Avos. After that, we're going through Sefer Bereshis. The foundation of our faith is the story of creation as described in Parshas Bereshis. Any other element of our faith follows from that. If anything goes wrong, if anything gets shaky about our faith in the story of Maaseh Bereshis, or alternative explanations are given to the story of creation, that creates a ripple effect, and it weakens our faith in every other area of Judaism, and it is the most fundamental. That is why the Torah says that the keeping of the Shabbos is so fundamental to Judaism, because it testifies to the original and unimpeded, uninterpreted story of creation. The first major attack against Maaseh Bereshis happened with the Greek philosophers. They were called heathens because in those days, all knowledge was received through tradition. All knowledge was received from one's father, who received it from his father, to his father, all the way back to the story of Noach, and all the way back to the story of Adam HaRishon. The heathens decided that they're going to obtain knowledge through the use of their intellect, and created theories based on observations, and they used that to manipulate it in any way that they wanted. When Greek philosophy became popular, it was spread first by the Christians, eventually went into the Muslim territories, and it became the dominating force of thought and the basis of what we call Western culture. Later on, the Greek philosophies were advanced even further by the Catholic teachers, Nicholas Copernicus, who, in his attempt to explain our world, developed the idea of cosmological evolution, to explain how our universe came from nothing, developed by itself. This idea, as it became very popular in the Copernican revolution in the 1600s, led to the inevitable advancement of that through the teachings of Charles Darwin, where he said, well, if there's cosmological evolution, chances are there is probably also biological evolution. And he used his corrupted mind to gain theories of how human evolution could have evolved from a lower life form to a higher life form. Even in America, in the yeshiva system, there was for many decades an apathy where people would see this being taught, being brought in the textbooks, but it didn't really bother too many people. They felt that that's in the realm of secular studies, and it's not necessarily a detraction of the Judaic studies, of the Torah studies. But a great leader, Rabbi Victor Miller, stood up against this, and he realized that the fundamental teachings of evolution are there for the purpose of rejecting God and rejecting the initial story of creation and all of the destruction that comes from that. We are privileged to have heard the words of Rabbi Victor Miller's grandson, Rabbi Yaliyahu Brog, who gave a special message to this gathering. And we're going to ask that the words of Rabbi Yaliyahu Brog be presented now.
Dave, you have Rabbi Brog's a video ready?
Oh, do you want me to play the short video?
Short one, yeah, please, yeah.
The most important.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. Here it comes. Give me a second. Share. Hold on, I'm having a little issue. 1 second. Okay. It's coming. Hold on 1 second.
It's coming. Hold on 1 second.
David,
Hold on.
Hold on.
All right. Oh, sorry. I gotta share with sound. My bad. Share with sound. There we go.
The most important thing to know, as the Rambam states, that is a creator. However, the Yetzer Hara is busy fighting against it. That's his job, to fight against the truths and to give us room to have free will and exercise our Bechira to choose what's right. And therefore, he harnessed the universities and the colleges and the scientists and the governments to push the theory of evolution, which is as silly as could be and is disgusting as could be, lying to the public and belittling our Father in heaven. Now, there probably there weren't too many people who studied the subject for as many years as Rabbeinu Harav Avigdor Miller, Zechreinu Levracha, studied it. At one point he stated, I studied the subject for 74 years, and I hate it, he said. It was so disgusting to him. But he was fighting for the honor and the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, telling people, showing people not to be influenced by what they're taught in high school books, what they read in every periodical, which they take as a matter of fact. And therefore, we could call him the scientist par excellence, who showed the world the truth that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the creator, and he mopped the floor with evolution. How they lied, literally lied, and they lie, and not to admit that there's a creator who they have to be subservient to. And therefore, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to please give us the understanding to incorporate the truth within us, and we should be Zoicha to Umala Kol Haaretz Deya.
Okay, great. So we're ready to introduce Professor Daniel Nisim.
I think he needs to raise his hand so I can find him and unmute him, or he can just request unmute. I don't see him on the list here.
He's sitting with Svarim in the background, with books in the background, easily identifiable. He's raising his hand.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Sorry. Thank you. There you go.
Thank you, David.
Welcome. There you go.
Thank you, Rav Shalom, who did a lot of work behind the scenes for organizing this thing. And probably there is a whole team that I don't know. I want to thank everybody. Thanks, Rabbi Gottesman. And also welcome to my friends here. I see some from Bet Shemesh here, Moshe, Rafi, Alan, and others that probably I don't see. So, Toda Rabba, thank you. And so I was asked to kind of first introduce who I am. I'll start with that. I'm going to share now my slide set. Share. Oh, send request. You have to allow me to share, please. Okay. You can see the slides?
Not yet. Now we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I will be, so if there is anything that doesn't work, please let me know because I will not be able to see you. So it's kind of, when we present on Zoom, it's like on the going blind. At least on a live presentation, you see the reaction of people, you see how they like, they don't like, you have to see the frowns, you see the smiles. But when we do on Zoom, it's kind of going blind. And so here we go. Let's start. So first of all, Rav Brock spoiled it for me, but I wanted to say who is the greatest scientist of all times? Can you ever guess? Well, it's Rav Victor Miller. Rav Victor Miller is shiurim on, for example, on evolution. He has things. It's unbelievable. This is a Rav that at his sped they said. I did not. Can other people mute, please? There are some people making noise. Okay, so Rav Victor Miller said when at his hesped they said he finished Shas over 100 times, and at the same time, when you listen to his shiurim on evolution, he is there quotingly. George Gaylor Simpson at page 574 said, and I checked, and that was the top evolutionist at the time. So he had tremendous knowledge, and he wrote an amazing book that I recommend everybody to buy. It's called Rejoice, O Youth. If you like just the science part, it's on that other small book, The Universe Testifies. There's so much to say about him, but I would like to move on presentation because I know I'm on a clock. I want just to say one nuggets that one gem that he said, and I think it applies to the talk today, is the truth is everywhere, but few men are able to see it. The truth is everywhere, but few men are able to see it. Okay, let's go. Do you know what this is? Well, I'll let you some time to think. We're going to discover together what this is. We're going to also discover other things, like the creature that converts air in water. There is one like that does this. One that converts blood into milk. This one maybe you can guess. One that has produces light with 100% efficiency, 100%. And trivia question: are there more processes in the body, on the human body, or grains of sands on Earth? Interesting question. What happens inside an egg? And let's see an example of resurrection, mamash resurrection, tchiyat hamitim in the animal world, plus much more. So if you allow me, let's go. So first of all, I was born in Italy. I'm Italian, and I did study electronic engineering at the Politecnico di Milano, and I was zoche to be one of the first pioneers of the program Erasmus time that now is very established, that brings students all over the place. And I went to the École Centrale Paris, called today Centrale Supélec for the French people. And I studied also at the Sorbonne, and I studied also at INSEAD. I did some business. So I switched from engineering to business at one point, went to England to do management consulting, asked them to transfer me to the US. And then I realized that business was not for me. My nature was technical. I wanted to go back to technical. And I went to MIT. I was okay to enter MIT. I did my PhD in materials engineering. And then I have a very moving photo that I want to share with you, where the rector and the president of MIT put the hood on me, as you can see in here. Very interesting picture, right? And then I wanted to be a professor in the US, and Rabot Machashavot Belev Ish Vatzat Hashem Itakum. We can think everything we want. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides. He decided, no, you go to Israel. And he made me find the job at Bar Ilan University in the newly started nanotechnology department. I'm part of the Department of Chemistry and Nanotechnology. I lead a team that does a synthesis of nanomaterials for energy applications like hydrogen production and things like this. Okay, so at least you know everything about me. If we ask a big question, what's the goal of life? There is one sefer, one book that I really recommend. Maybe Rabbi Gottesman after Bereshit, Mesilat Yesharim is the one on the list. And he says, what's the goal of life? He says clearly what the goal of life. He says, man was created only to delight in Hashem and to enjoy the splendor of his presence. And that's the true pleasure. He said everything else is just, make the time pass, but enjoying the presence of Hashem. And that, in fact, he said, really it's in Olam Haba, but there are ways to enjoy it in this world. So the question is, how can we get close to Hashem? Because that's the biggest pleasure. So that's the purpose of today. Let's say, the problem also, he said, the Mesilat Yesharim is honest, and he says, listen, it's not a walk in the park. There are many obstacles because HaKadosh Baruch Hu has put a lot of obstacles on the way to get there, and those are usually our physical pleasures. And today, I want to use an expression that a friend of mine said, we're unfortunately surrounded by something that in Hebrew, we can call a mabul shel shtut, a flood of stupidity. We're mamash invaded by this. Things like atheism, there's no God, there's no creator, so no reward, no punishment, I can do everything I want. Evolution, we're not going to talk about that a lot. And of course, if there is evolution, who do you think you are? You just evolved from the monkey, so what is there in there? And then the time wasters, internet, phone, we are becoming zombies, that we are wasting our time on all those things, because that's the purpose of the Yetzirah, to get us waste time. That time is the most precious resource we have. Fake news like free porcupine. Oh, you don't know what's... From the river to the sea, porcupine will be free. You heard that before? Maybe it's not porcupine, whatever it is. Okay, so that's another thing of this kind. And then, of course, eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow you'll die. So what's purpose of life? Is just... so we have to escape this. And the Torah gives us a program to escape in 2 steps. Everything is in 2 steps. Sur Mera, get away from evil, Va'aseh Tov, and do the good. So the Sur Mera, I'm not going to tell you, you ask your local Orthodox rabbi, Sur Mera, you put a filter, you try to remove all those time-wasting activities or the detrimentals, try to clear the Ashkafa. I want to focus on the positive. I want to focus on how do we get closer to Hashem. And I think there are 2 options. One option, maybe not for everybody, but it's a fantastic option if you can do it, is study Torah. Because when you study Torah, you see the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in it. You get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whoever contemplates the Torah and engages with it, it is as if he is holding the whole world. I'll give you one example, just a scientific example. Since I'm a scientist, I'm going to show you one example. How many stars are there in the sky? Okay, well, if you look with the naked eye, you can see maximum 2,000 stars. Okay, so that's not a big deal. So when you think about the beracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Avraham Avinu, said, you'll be as numerous as the stars in the sky. In my street, there are more than 2,000 people. So it's not such a great blessing, right? But then things changed in 1608. The Dutch invented the telescope. And then Galileo Galilei started perfecting it. And there we started seeing many more stars. By 1801, we were close to 50,000. By 1850, around 300. By 1950, we were in the millions of stars. And then there was another technical inflection point, the satellite. The Hubble satellite came up, 10,000 galaxies, then the Gaia satellite, and then the James Webb satellite. And if you look at all the estimates, we can only estimate, there's no way we can count the stars. They can only estimate. How do you estimate? You look a little piece of the sky and you see the density of stars, and then you extrapolate what it would be on a solid angle, whatever it is. And the numbers are between 10 to the 18 and 10 to the 24, meaning 10 to the 18 is a billion. Yes, it's a 1 followed by 18 zeros. 10 to the 24 is a 1 followed by 24 zeros. It's a million, billion, billions. Okay? The thing to be careful as scientists, so one more time, I want to clarify, I'm not a rabbi. I'm a scientist, so I'm going to talk scientifically here. First, we need to be careful. Extrapolations and assumptions, among the most pernicious things that are in there, and in evolution, we're going to see that extrapolation is the key killer of the whole thing. In fact, Rav David Gottlieb says there are three main mistakes in science. Extrapolation is one of them. Okay. I'll tell you one personal example of mistake of extrapolation. In the year 2000, when the internet stocks were going up, I bought internet stocks and I had them, and I extrapolated they were continuing going up. And then there was that infamous day when I saw how they went down and down and down, and I lost so much money on that thing, right? So extrapolation doesn't always work. So first, this extrapolation is we have to estimate the number of stars in our galaxy, the Milky Way, and it's 10 to the 11. So it's 100 billions. Okay, that's an extrapolation, number one. Second, we have to estimate the number of galaxies. We have no idea how much they are, and we estimate there are 10 to the 12, 2 10 to the 12. And then, and this is a gross hypothesis, we have to hypothesize that all galaxies have the same estimated number as ours because there's no way we can count them. So when you take those assumptions, extrapolations, hypotheses, and you put them together, you get this range between 10 to the 20, 18, 10 to 24. And this is after billions of dollars spent by NASA and company on satellites and telescopes, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So what can the Torah do against this background? It's kind of difficult, right? Well, the Talmud, the Gemara, that was completed around the year 500, so way before, something like over 1,000 years before the first telescope appeared. If you look at the first volume, Sechet Berachot, at page 32 on the back, 32b, there is an enigmatic text where you have HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is saying the Bnei Israel are complaining. Can someone mute there? Dave, can you mute the... Okay, so he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, my daughter, why do you complain? I created for you, and he started telling how many stars he created for the Jewish people. He created 32 constellations for each constellation, 12 constellations, sorry, for each constellation, 30 legions for each legion, whatever, and you go through the number, so I'm not going to do here, you go through all the number that is in this Gemara, and you find out the number of estimated stars. And it is 1.0643 10 to the 18. Unbelievable, very in the ballpark of the estimates of the scientists today. So I want you to think 1 second. Imagine being in the year 500 and going in the streets and say, Chevre, there are 10 to the 18 stars in the sky. You know what they would do to you? They would put you, the white gown thing like this, where you cannot move, and put you in the hospital for the crazy people. Because only a crazy person would have said that there are 10 to the 18 stars when with the naked eye you can see only 2,000. Right? So that's an example. Another example that is very nice is the cycle of the moon. But I want to move on the second option, which is study the creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in fact, another beautiful sefer, the Ahavat Hashem, duties of the heart, and Rav Avigdor Miller Zatzal said it's the duties of the mind, because it's Chovot Alevavot. Lev, he said that when there is the word lev, which in the modern Hebrew means heart, it really means the mind. It's the duties of the mind. And he said in there that the most direct way to gain a clear understanding of Hashem's presence, meaning to get close to Him, which is the goal we talked about at the beginning, is to examine the wisdom that is evident in His creations. And what I want to do with you is spend an hour, less than that, looking at specific examples from a scientific point of view. And from there, you'll see that, wow, amazing, never thought about this. Let's have a look. So first of all, when you look at the universe, it's something amazing. You have 10 to the 40 orders of magnitude between the smallest and the biggest, which is the biggest number that you can even imagine, right? 10 to the 40. Just to give you an idea, if I had 10 to the 40 people giving me a millionth of a cent, I would be way richer than Elon Musk. Okay? So it's difficult to fathom those numbers, 10 to the power of 40. Okay. What is a miracle? Let's define this. There is a fantastic rabbi called Rabbi Joseph Citru, and he was the chief rabbi of France for 21 years, and he said this beautiful sentence, but it's in French, so I'll translate it for you. He says, nature is the modest veil of protection that God extends over man so as not to force him to believe in God. And I want you to keep in mind this sentence because we're going to see it back later after we see many examples. Because right now, maybe this sentence doesn't really, you don't feel it as it should be felt. But after you see examples and you realize how Hashem is hiding his greatness, his signature in every creation, then you'll appreciate it more. Let's go on. An example. Let's go technical now. Concepts of hydrophobicity and hydrophilicity. Hydrophobicity means something hates water. For example, a lotus leaf. Look at the lotus leaf. The guy is throwing water on it and it remains dry. The water just rolls over because the surface of the lotus leaf is nanostructured. It has specific spikes. For the technical people out there, you can think about Cassie-Baxter equations. And basically the water rolls off and the leaf remains dry. On the opposite, you have something called superhydrophilic. So basic superhydrophilic means that the water spreads completely over the surface. How do we measure hydrophobicity? Hydrophilicity, for the technical people, it's called contact angle. It's the angle that this kind of semi-drop or drop does with the surface. And when the contact angle is over 150 degrees, we say that the surface is super hydrophobic. Okay, you got the background? Hydrophobic, hydrophilic. With this background, we can understand an interesting creatures, the Namibian desert beetle. This little beetle lives in the Namibian desert that you can imagine it's a very, very hot and very dry environment. But this creature has to drink. How does he drink? So what he does, on his wings, he has those bumps that are super hydrophilic, meaning they attract water, they love water. And a couple of times a week, there is a kind of tiny humidity that comes from the sea far away. And what he does, he takes the humidity, condenses it on those super hydrophilic tips. The rest of the wing is super hydrophobic. And when the drop is big enough, will fall by gravity directly in his mouth for him to drink. So he has created the water from the air. Right. And in fact, this concept has been used because we have been doing, technically, you'll see here, those curtains have been put in very humid places. And basically, using the same structure, they take the humidity from the air and they collect it so you have water. Imagine if you had the cup super hydrophobic inside with dots super hydrophilic. You go at night, before night, you put it in your balcony. You wake up in the morning, you take it, and then you have fresh water. Now, creature who can turn blood into milk. Well, of course, we know this one, but it takes something like 40 to 60 kilos of grass and 120 to 140 liters of water, and we call it a cow. And when you study the system for generating all this, is amazingly complicated. So I'm not going to go into this, but and we still don't understand how we convert blood into milk. The one thing that is fascinating, though, is that the property of milk depends on the type of species. For example, otaries have a milk that is 60% in fat compared to the 4 to 6% of cows because they live in very cold environments, so they need fat. So the mommy otary needs to have very fatty milk for little baby to survive the cold. And there is one that is the most amazing. It's called the Tamar wallaby. It's a little kind of marsupial, kind of kangaroo. She has 4 breasts in her pockets, and she can nurse simultaneously 2 little ones with 2 different concentrations of milk, one more sweet and one more rich on fat, depending if it's a newborn or it's a more advanced kind of baby at the same time. So imagine the chemical factory that goes inside this animal for producing at the same time 2 different milks with 2 different compositions. It's absolutely unbelievable. So when you see this, that's when, wow, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, unbelievable. You did something like this. I want to show you this. It's extremely exciting. So pay very much attention. Look carefully. I'm going to start the video. Ready? Go. Look, look, look. Okay. Did you see? Exciting? Oh, sorry. I apologize. It went too fast. I want to show you the same video with the high-speed camera. Let me show you. This is the squirting cucumber. He detaches and he spits the seeds at a 45-degree angle, which is the exact angle if you have done some cinematics and of when you throw a cannonball or something, to get those seeds as far away as possible to be planted. Unbelievable, right? When we saw it before, we didn't realize how amazing it was. This is what he is doing when you look at it in slow motion. When you looked at that normal speed, look, nothing happened, right? You didn't see a thing. Can you imagine how fast this goes? And when you go into the inside, you see that this is a pretty amazing architecture. So this is the outside, and when you go inside, you'll see this is the structure. Imagine how it should be under pressure for having those seeds be spit there so fast. And these are all the seeds inside. It accumulates all the water, and then at some point it spritzes the whole thing. Amazing. Okay. So I don't know why it wrote something here. I want to show you another thing. We never thought about this. I had this thought just a few weeks ago. I was eating a cucumber, and I was wondering, we all know that the red is very water content, or very high water content. You know how much? 92%. So the question is, how can something that has 92% content in water be solid? Because, when you open the watermelon, except for a little bit of liquid that comes because you put the knife, it still holds. And then you eat it and it's crunchy. And in fact, Rav Victor Miller Zatzal said something beautiful. He said, there are three types of tshuva. There is a low type of tshuva. The lowest type is lo alenu, someone gets sick. Someone gets sick, and so he prays HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please save me from the sickness. Okay, that's the lowest level. A higher level is someone sees his friend sick. So he sees that, and he says, Hashem, please, I do tshuva. I don't want to be like my friend. But he says, what's the highest level of tshuva, of repentance? It's when, in a scorchy hot summer day, you take this cold, juicy watermelon and you eat it, and it's sweet and it's fresh and it's good, and you say, Hashem, thank you, I love you. He says this is the greatest level of tshuva. So hold on a second, let's see if there is an eraser. Okay, I can erase this thing and erase this thing. Okay, perfect. Okay, let's see how watermelons grow. So this is a time lapse of watermelons. Look at the day. It will take in total something like 120 days. So now it's just throwing the leaf. You may wonder, how does it know that it has to go up and the branch and the roots go down? Then it becomes quite big. It becomes quite big, and it will get out of the vase because it's really become big. So we are at day 30. Still only leaves. At some point there are flowers. And in fact, it needs a pollinator, it needs to be synchronized with the animal world to have the pollination happening for then starting the watermelon. So we're still at the flower level, not yet any fruit. And all this started from the tiny seed. All the program is in there. The whole genetic program for doing this is in that tiny seed that we spit usually. And Rav Vidor Miller says it's slippery because it needs to be spit, and it's even bitter because it wants to tell you, I'm not edible. Spit me on the ground so I can do. So here is where the flower level. And at some points you see the, here we go, little watermelon. You see the little one? Here we go. Look how it's growing. Now it's exponential growth. Now time is passing and this thing is become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until something like, I think, day 80 or 90. And then it will stop growing. And it will look like nothing happens. But in fact, a lot is happening. Inside, it's acidic. And what is going on during these days now that you see, it's amazing chemistry inside that it's transforming the acidic content into the sweet content that we know. It takes something like 20 days for them to have our good, sweet, juicy watermelon. Isn't that amazing? So when we see this, it's the signature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Here you have your watermelon. Okay. I want to compare two things. Lego versus egg. Okay? So Lego, that was my favorite toy when I was a kid. So if I asked you, you see this Lego there on the left? And I tell you, I'll give you $1 million if you can do it. Can you do it? Of course, everybody will say yes. But I will add one small condition. I don't want you to open the box. I'll give it to you in a big box, and I will allow you only to shake the box. And when it's ready, you can open the box and show me the train station. Would you take the bet? Impossible. What guy is asking us, right? So let's have a look. Let's look what happens in the liquid, in the egg, sorry. The egg has two liquids, right? It has the yolk, the red, the yellow, and the white. Let's see inside what happens. It's fascinating. It's 21 days, and basically the hen sits on the egg and gives only heat. There's no other action done, only heat. And here you see which day it is, and it shows you what's going on, and it starts with the heart and the spine. We're still far from a chick, but everything is growing, and suddenly the limbs develop. There's a program there. There's a brain, there's the eye. All timed exactly day by day on what has to happen. Develops now the beak. And then he has to develop the feathers. So here we go on the skin. The mouth opens. Remember, it's in a liquid, so there's no breathing yet. The claws, the tail. Okay, he opens his eye. Very cute. Remember, he's inside the egg. It's quite confined. And there's no supply of anything from the outside, right? Okay, the ones who know that scientists sometimes say things that are not true will challenge me. We're going to talk about it in a second. So we are close to the end now. It's all inside. It's all inside. Fills all the space. And at some point, he absorbs also the yolk sac, which is basically like the placenta, keilu, like that provides some nutrients during this time, and then peaks on it. And Eze Hamud comes out the cheek. Cute, right? So let's think about this for a second. Some thoughts about the egg. First of all, remember why I presented you the Lego before. The Lego has something like, let's say, a dozen or few dozen types of pieces, and it has hundreds or thousands of pieces inside, right? The egg is the same thing. It has something like a dozen types of atoms, but it has how many? If you remember a nice Italian scientist, Amedeo Avogadro, 10 to the 24 roughly, right? 10 to the 23. So we're talking about a million, billion atom, roughly order of magnitude in the egg. So lots of pieces, much more than the Lego box. Okay? And think about this. All these atoms, the types and the number is exactly calculated for the chick to develop and all the food and nutrients it will need during the 21 days. So when the hen does the egg with the two yellows, the two liquids inside, this is everything is in there. All the Lego pieces are in there for doing the train station. Quite amazing. And why I told you to shake the box? Because the hen, what is she doing? She's only providing heat. In fact, you can put the egg in an incubator. You also have a chick. And the heat is in chemistry is a molecular agitation. So it's basically like shaking the box. Okay, that's why I told you, if you shake the box, I'll give you $1 million if you can form the train station. That's what's going on in the egg. This is if we look at this as a chemist. Let's look at it from a material science perspective. You have two liquids to start, and then you have hard beak, soft skin, feathers, jelly organs, all these from two liquids. From the two liquids, you have so many different materials forming in there. This is amazing, and all according to a precise sequence. So how do they form this? Where is the program? Where is the intelligence in the liquids? Okay, we know about DNA. I want to say a few words about the shell, because the shell is amazing. The shell has to withstand the weight of the hen during incubation. And in fact, the shape of the egg has been used by civil engineers for doing domes and things like this, because it distributes the weight in an amazing way. Now, two things that I bet that you don't know that are absolutely amazing. And this is where, when you look at the fine print, you see the signature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One, the thickness of the eggshell reduces during the 21 days. There's a scientific paper on it with all the details if you want. And why does it? Because if it were as thick as it was at the beginning, the chick could not break it with its beak. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it should be hard at the beginning because the hen is sitting on it, and it should be soft at the end for the chick to get out. And this is all programmed. The thickness of the shell is programmed to being reduced over the 21 days. I'll tell you one more thing that I don't think you knew. The shell is nanoporous, meaning it's not, I told you, I cheated you. I told you it's like a Lego box. Nothing comes in, nothing comes out. It's not exactly true, because some air and moisture can come in. It's nanostructures. Big nanostructure, meaning it has 4 pores of dimensions of few nanometers. So some atoms can come inside, but not big things. Okay? Isn't that amazing? So, and another thing is the shell that is kind of, we say, oh, the shell, nothing special. It takes 21 hours to form the shell and only 3 hours for all the inside, which will make the cheek. Okay. On the human being, we have a similar system, but we have the placenta. And one thing that is amazing is when the baby comes out, there are 3 bypasses or valves that are very weird. One, there's an opening between the 2 chambers of the heart. And there is one bypass, it's called the foramen ovale. There is a ductus arteriosus that bypasses the lungs because the lungs are filled with liquid and they're not operational when the baby is inside the womb. And the third is the ductus venosus, which bypasses the liver because the liver also is inoperative at that point. And what is magic is when the baby comes out, those 3 close immediately. And if they don't close, it's a problem. And the baby now starts breathing and operating like we do, right? There is a beautiful, beautiful mashal that Rav Yonatan Rieti said, and I was in Boston, he came for a Shabbaton. He said, that in the old times, today we're liberal, we don't do it anymore, otherwise they will call the police. But when the babies came out from the mother womb, the doctors used to spank them, if you remember, right? And we got spanked. I mean, all the older people here like me may remember that or not. Whatever. So why the doctor spanked the baby? Because he wanted the baby to cry, because the baby crying activates the closure of those 3 things. So Rav Rieti said, imagine being the baby. You are inside the womb. It's thermal control, air conditioned. You are learning Torah with the Malach. You are seeing from one end of the world, like the Gemara says. You are mamash Gan Eden, is paradise. And then suddenly there is an earthquake. You pass through a very narrow canal and it hurts, and then you get out and it's cold. And there's this big guy in a white gown that takes him with these huge hands. And you look and you see mommy and daddy tired but happy. They smile at you. And then this big doctor takes his hand, on the tushy. A big spank. And you cry and it hurts. It hurts. And you look at this evil doctor who spanked you. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do any avera, any chet, nothing. I didn't do anything wrong and he spanked me. This is unfair. In Israel they could say, zelo fair. Zelo fair. Okay? And so the baby at this point looks at daddy. Daddy, I'm sure he will take his right fist and put it in the gums of this guy that deserves it. And then what the father says? Thank you, doctor. Chazaku baruch, yesh koach, appreciate it, toda rabba. And then it's demoralizing. You didn't do anything wrong. You get punished, and so he says, from this we learn 3 lessons. Lesson number 1, that in life, hard, difficult things that hurt happen. Okay. Lesson number 2 is that even the things that hurt us, they are for our own good. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu does only things for our own good. The third, the most important lesson is that one day, and we hope it will not be in Olam Haba, we'll realize it was for our own good. Imagine this kid as a teenager goes to a science class and they explain all the things I explained before, and he says, oh, mine, oh, you have to ask Mechila. Sorry, doctor, he's a tzaddik. He really helped me, and I thought he was a Rasha. Okay? Well, the Rambam says, it's a chokmah she'em bo ketz. When you look at creation, it's a chokhmah, it's a knowledge, the wisdom. There's no end to it. So, light source with 100% efficiency. If you look at different light sources, Edison's light bulb was very inefficient, converted less than 10% in light. Today we have LEDs, much more, but we have one animal in nature called the firefly that converts with 100% efficiency. So I give you a business idea. Do a company to have 100% efficient light. Can you imagine, when you take the plane at night, you see how many lights are illuminating the city? Can you imagine how much savings we would have if we had 100% efficient light? Well, the only problem is that the chemistry is quite complicated. Okay, so if you want to tackle this problem, I saw there is a guy who made a thesis on it of something like a couple of 100 pages, and with all chemical reactions. If you're interested, I can send you the link. Then we come to this. What is this thing that I told you before? Any clue? Well, I would have said maybe it's the map of a subway. So I went to look for the most complex subway station out there, and this is the Beijing. But it looks much simpler than the one thing I showed you. So what is this thing? It's metabolic pathways, meaning all the reactions that happen in the body. Oh, I apologize, Mechila. It's very difficult to read. So let's take this little part and I make it bigger for you. Okay, now you understand, right? You see how simple it is? Okay, this was just a small quadrant of this. And by the way, this is the old version of Roche, the pharmaceutical company. They're doing a new one. I couldn't find the new one yet. So this is what's going on in the body. More than 3,000 to 5,000 known metabolic reactions in our body, hundreds of metabolic pathways that are happening. And if you look at the cellular level, you have another one that is even more complicated than before. We have something like 30,000 billion cells for 200 types of different cell types, a little more bacteria than cells. And if you make the calculations of how many reactions are happening in every cell, when you look all these data together, you have more than 10 to the 20 molecular processes that are active at any given time in the human body. 10 to the 20 is 100 billion billions. So now I ask you the question, are there more molecular processes active in a body or grains of sands on all Earth? Estimated. Well, more in the body. There is something like 100 times less grains of sands in the Earth compared to the molecular processes that are going on inside your body right now as we speak. So now let's go back to the sentence. What is a miracle? What is nature? Nature is the modest veil of protection that Hashem spreads over man, so not to force him to believe in God. Now, when you think back to all these examples we have seen, isn't that clear? Hashem has made it in a way that we take it for granted. Everything is granted, but then you look in detail and you start thinking scientifically to it. You realize, Kadosh Baruch Hu, you're amazing. And in fact, you know what? I could end the presentation here. By the way, I'm writing weekly Dvar Torah on topics like, for example, the watermelon or others, even more complicated. If you're interested, this is the email, and this is the for the WhatsApp that you can scan. And I could finish the presentation here and tell you Toda Rabba. We're all excited. We go home, or now we believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We are close to our Creator, and we finish the presentation, right? Well, the problem is that when you go home, then you look at things like this. Evolution has been proven beyond doubt. Oh, the evolution of the whale. It's a fact. Everything is a fact. And of course, you have this. You know, you have all. By the way, I want to tell you a little joke just to start the situation. You have little Johnny. Little Johnny goes to Daddy, and he asked, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, how were we? How did I come up in the world? How was I created?" And the daddy said, but Johnny, everybody knows, you know, there was a pond, and from the pond there was a fish, and the fish became a lizard, and the lizard became a donkey, and the donkey became a monkey, and the monkey became us, and we evolved from the monkey. Little Johnny, thank you, daddy, but he's not convinced. So he goes to mom. He says, Mommy, Mommy, how did you come up in the world? He said, but Johnny, everybody knows. God created Adam and Eve, and they had children, and they had children, and children, and children, and here we are. Mommy, Daddy told me that we evolved from the monkey. Johnny, Daddy was talking about his family. I'm talking to you about mine. Okay, so we have to decide which family we want to belong. So anyway, and of course you look at things, evolution has occurred and continues to occur. It's a fact, undisputed fact. But the question is it really a fact? Is it really a fact? So what I want to do, you heard already the words of Rav Brog. You may have heard about the Rav Miller's position on it. I want to analyze it with you from a scientific perspective and not just take it as a dogma. And then let's see together what we can make it out of it. So first of all, I need to introduce what is the scientific method. So science asks questions, constructs hypotheses, and then the results should fit the hypothesis. If there is even one result that contradicts the hypothesis, I want you to memorize this. Only one result contradicts an hypothesis. The hypothesis is not a theory. It is not. Okay? So this is applied in all fields of science. We do hypotheses all the time, and we need to see the result. I can say, for example, you see this nice watch here. If I open my hand, it will start flying. It's a hypothesis. The problem is when I open my hand, it will fall and smash on the floor. My hypothesis was wrong. Okay? So that's a very important point we need to remember for the following. And is science always true? Because sometimes people think, scientists, I mean, it's good for me, right? Because the people, wow, oh, he's a scientist. Oh, great, he is the best man on earth, right? But at the same time, you know, science is not always so kosher. You know, scientists are human beings. Scientists have incentives, you know, to be promoted from associate professor to full professor. You need to publish. And if you don't publish, you perish. And there are a lot of pressures on this. So if you look at the Wikipedia list of scientific misconduct incidents, you'll find many, many pages of them with a lot of names. The most famous is this guy here, is Jan Hendrik Schön, a German guy working at Bell Labs. Bell Labs is an amazing lab. They invented the transistor. They found the signal of the Big Bang, etc., etc. It's an amazing lab. And he was doing research on single molecule transistor. And he published something amazing in Nature or Science. And then after that, he kept on publishing in Nature, Science. Mamash is superstar of superstars. The problem is that when you open a new field of science, a lot of people try to get into the bandwagon, right? So many universities had professors working in molecular electronics, trying to replicate, first of all, what he did. And it did not work. And it did not work. And it did not work. Many PhDs, students failed their PhD. Advisors were fed up because they spent a lot of money and it didn't work, so they started making investigations. And they figured out the guy cheated the whole thing. How did they find out? They found out that on paper number 18, the level of noise, which is a random signal that cannot be duplicated even by repeating the same experiment exactly just after, was exactly the same noise that he had on paper number 7. And basically they framed it. A big cheater. I mean, kol hakavod, a very smart guy, but unbelievable cheater. 32 papers retracted, many others arguable. One German professor said, is the biggest scientific embarrassment of all times, this guy. And then, of course, you have other things like Watson and Crick. Hey, they discovered the DNA. But the ones who study science, they know that they took the microscopy from Rosalind Franklin, and she didn't have anything, and they got the Nobel Prize, which was totally unfair. So Trump would call this fake science. So we need to be careful about fake science. And in fact, many times, theories have been hypotheses or they call it even theories, and then they were retracted. Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize of Physics, one of the biggest physicists of the past century, he said, there's no valid theories. There are only theories that have not yet been disproved. Okay? And for example, Newtonian mechanics is amazing. If you did any engineering, you learn that, and you can build houses and cars and airplanes and missiles and everything, right? The question is, do they apply? Does that work on the very small or on the very fast? And in fact, without going into much detail, if you go at speeds close to the speed of light, you cannot use it. You have to correct it. It's a relativistic mechanics. And if you go on the very small, which is where my field is, nanotechnology, we go on the very small, it's quantum mechanics. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore either. So, okay, was Newtonian mechanics false? No, but its field has been now restricted to none too small and none too fast. Okay, important. Now let's go to this. Of course, we have this Darwin, 1859, Origins of Species, and of course, I don't want to be disrespectful. This was Wikipedia that did his picture like this. And I'll tell you first. Let's understand what it is. It's basically descent with the word already. Descent in Hebrew is yerida, which is something bad. When one descends, is very bad. But it's descent with motivication and natural selection, and it's unguided. So the key thing of this is that there's no intervention. It's only unguided. The issue of this is that because everything happens randomly, man is just an accident. And that's where it's very pernicious in terms of hashkafa, in terms of beliefs, because if one believes into this, then he loses all the importance, all the chashivut, all the greatness of the human being. Because there is no difference between a woman and a man, it's just a random mutation that happens. And so the question is, when we see this hypothesis that Darwin did, says, how you have seen just before the watermelon, you have seen before the egg, you have seen before. How can someone with sane of mind come with such a idiotic hypothesis? How is it possible? But that has been done. And what we'll see, there is something true. It's not totally false. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Dama chitashiv lapikoros. We need to know what to answer the heretic. Rav Victor Miller Zatzal said, we need to be careful. The heretic may be us. We need to know what to answer to us. We are all suffering from this, so let's try to see answers for ourselves. And when I tell you about this is so dangerous as an approach. This is showing the blue curve is the number of people who basically don't believe that there was a God or any intervention. And unfortunately, this number has gone up steadily. There are some, I apologize to use very strong language, very evil, imashemo people who wrote books that have been sold in the millions of copies that have encouraged people to believe things like this. And they're full of scientific lies. And we're going to try to dispel some of them. Okay, and this is scary. This is scary because when you see the insanity going on in our world, when someone doesn't even know if he's a boy or a girl or things of this kind, this is where this comes from. So that's why Rav Victor Miller Zatzal fought for 74 years on this thing. I'm sure he didn't want to waste his time studying this thing. He would have been much better off finishing Shas another 100 times instead. So, and it's such a hot topic. There are so many, it's a dogma. And I'm here talking to you, and I'm talking to you only because I'm a full professor. 3 years ago, I would not have given this talk because it's somehow dangerous to speak about this. I'll give you an example. This Dr. Eric Hedin was teaching a course where he was showing how the universe basically was the constants of physics and chemistry and are basically exactly designed for life. And the students loved it, even atheistic students. And then there was this other professor, unfortunately a Jew, Jerry Coyne, who wrote also, is one of the ones writing the horrible books, from Chicago, some 400 kilometers away. He got news that this Hedin was teaching something that could look like intelligent design. So he basically called the school, made a whole balagan. Hedin was almost fired. And then he wrote this book called Cancelled Science, were to explain what he was doing. You surely know about the Dover School. They dare to teach evolution and intelligent design. It went through a judge. It lasted a month. The judge was a super ultra corrupt, inept judge anyway. And basically it comes with the conclusion: teaching intelligent design in public school biology classes violates the establishment clause, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this is where we went. And it's such a hot topic that there's been tons of cheating. The Piltdown Man, a fake skull of man with the jaw of a chimpanzee or whatever, so to make believe that was the missing link, until at the X-ray they figured out it was a fake. The peppered moth, the famous picture of the pepper moth on the trunk tree. There was an expert who studied peppered moth for 40 years. He says they very rarely go on trunk trees. It's bizarre. And he made an inquiry, and basically they glued dead moth on the trunk to make this believe. The Haeckel's embryos also, and the Archoraptor, a big fashla, a big embarrassment for National Geographics, who thought it was a intermediate between the running and the flying dinosaurs, etc., etc. And in the scientific world, many fear ruining their career. One who did was Richard Sternberg. He was the editor of the Proceedings of the Biological Society of Washington, and he dared publish a paper on intelligent design that was peer-reviewed, and he got so much flack of it, they demoted him. At the end, he left. It was too much. Michael Behe, who writes beautiful books on irreducible complexity and other things, in his website, he's a full professor, can't fire him, tenure, he writes, my arguments about irreducible complexity and intelligent design are my own and are not endorsed either by Lehigh University in general or the Department of Biology Science in particular. So that means, like, I work for General Motors, but the CEO hates me and my boss doesn't like me. We are at this situation. Rav Moshe Alvarez Zatzal wrote a book kind of to dispel, to understand, and he gave me even a words of beracha, of what I'm doing right now is fulfilling his bracha. And he said, let's try to understand what is the machloket here between intelligent design and evolution. He says, contrary to popular belief, nobody disagrees about the existence of very high level of this complexity of design, functional complexity, and specified information in the living world. And the point number two is, contrary to popular belief, nobody disagrees with the argument from design, including every atheist and skeptic in the world. The suit proves the existence of the tailor, the poem the existence of the poet, and the watch the existence of the watchmaker. And those are working because of the laws of physics and mathematics. So what is the disagreement? Well, he says the non-believer argues that the argument from design cannot be applied to the world of living systems, that it does not apply to the design observed in living organisms. So it's the one exception. So only this one is the only exception. Everything else is fine, but on this one, no. Let's have a look. So first of all, there's something that we need to clarify, and it is very, very important. When people use the word evolution, they use it as a cholent word that is really misused. Really, there are three things. There is something called microevolution, macroevolution, and abiogenesis, which is origin of life. It has nothing to do with the evolution, but it's put there in the cholent. So I want to dispel understand those three concepts. Microevolution is exactly what Darwin observed. The beaks of the finches were adapted to their environment, and he reported on it. Perfect. When you have dogs, you have a Chihuahua going with a German Shepherd, and you have a strange dog coming out, but it's a dog. A dog is a dog is a dog. This one is furry, this one is not whatever, but they're dogs. The macroevolution is the famous one, from the pond to the fish, to the lizard, to the donkey, etc. And then origin of life is the story of Urey Miller experiment, where basically you explode some chemicals that you pass a spark, and you have some gases coming, and you find some amino acids, and there you see, from there we can build life. We're going to talk about that. So microevolution is true. That's the true part. we know that our organisms can adapt and in a limited way. For example, antibiotics, malaria. There are many examples of microevolution. I'll give you an example. You see this nice guy here? Well, I think he's a very nice guy, but his wife said he's not much in shape. So what she's doing, she sent him to the gym for 2 years to do bodybuilding. And this is how he became. Okay? So this is an example of microevolution. You play piano for 2 years and you can run a concert. It's microevolution. You go to the beach and you become suntan. It's microevolution. And beware of the interpretations of microevolutions. For example, the famous case of DDT and mosquitoes. When you say, the DDT worked the first time, but the second time it worked less, and the third time it worked less, and you say, oh, because they develop resistance. Maybe it's not develop resistance, because if you kill all the weak ones, then the ones that reproduce are the strong ones. And then it becomes more and more difficult for the DDT to work. So it's like, well, I'm not going to do that. Okay. So is it a genetic mutation or is it elimination of the weak? And in fact, there's something else, fascinating topic of science called epigenetics, where basically the DNA has parts that are in there that are not operating, but can be activated depending on the environment. So it's like we have been created with the possibility to adapt to our environment already in the program. And in fact, the Talmud supports this. You know the famous story of the guy who wanted to unnerve Hillel on Erev Shabbat, and he goes, Hillel, I have very important questions for you. And one of them was, why are the Talmudians' eyes stretched? And he answered, because they live among the sands. When there are sands, you squint your eyes, you don't want the sand in the eyes, and you squint, and then you become eye-squinted person, and that's a microevolution. And then why are the feet of the Africans white? Because we live in the middle of the marshes. In the middle of the marshes, you want to swim, and it's good to have large feet. So they have large feet. So that's microevolution. So microevolution, which is exactly what Darwin observed, is true. The problem he made, the mistake he made was he said, well, we can extrapolate now to form different species, to go extrapolate, go beyond what was observed. And here I want to show many proofs again. Remember, I said you can make a hypothesis if you have even one single proof against, then it's not valid. First of all, he said it's a very slow process, but he says it's survival of the fittest. When you think about this deeply, you understand that the two concepts are in total contradiction one with another. And that's why some scientists like Stephen Jay Gould came up with the punctuated evolution, meaning suddenly, a donkey gives birth to a monkey. But the problem is mathematical probabilities are totally against it, and it has never been observed, even in all the 6,000 years of recorded history. Another thing is that random change cannot lead to new form with a purpose. So if the change is random, there's a contradiction there. You know that everything has a purpose. So how come the random change will lead to something with a purpose? Example, transforming fins and legs or things like this requires millions of morphological and DNA changes to occur. The statistics are absolutely impossible. It's like saying, if I told you that I buy one lottery ticket of every lottery in the world and I win all of them, you would say that there is a cheating here. It's impossible. But you know what? The probabilities of that happening are much higher than the probabilities of a fin becoming a leg. But nobody talks about that. So sudden change, absurd things about it. You have 3.1 billion base pairs of DNA, and you need to change the code. You know that in computer coding, if you change randomly a line of code, you're not going to improve the code, the program. You're going to destroy it. And this is it's estimated to 10 to the power of 12 bits, the computing power of the DNA. Okay. So if you apply, and another concept is irreducible complexity. So too many specific changes have to happen together. Imagine someone said, you know what? People were born with only a cardiovascular system, and after hundreds of millions of years, a respiratory system was added to it. It doesn't make any sense. You know, for a person to work, he needs respiratory system, it needs cardiovascular system, you need the heart, you need the veins, you need the arteries, you need the capillaries, you need the blood, and the blood has to have in there something like 12 cascade process for blood coagulation. Otherwise, first time that one cuts is dead. There are so many things that have to happen at the same time. You cannot say one happens now and one happens later. All of them had to be in there, and the complexity of the whole system is so incredible that just thinking that it can happen by a random way is beyond insanity. Okay, so Darwin calls Houston, we have a problem, we have a problem. So fossil record is against it. Many found, we should have found by the fossil record a bunch of evidence of this slow evolution we never found. And I want to tell you the one, my friend Moshe will know what I'm going to talk right now, because there is one evolutive sequence that Jerry Coyne says is the best sequence we have, from Indo-Heus to the whale. And basically, it requires something like 5 changes of species, and it gives only 10 million years. According to the scientists themselves, even without discussing the validity of the dating measurements and so on, according to them, there's only something like 10 to 30 million years between the one species and the other one. And they perfectly know it's impossible to make 5 changes of species and look at the size change also. It's how can it be? And on top of that, there's another thing that bothers a lot. It's the Cambrian explosion. There are some layers where you have all the species there. So there's no sequence. They were all there at the beginning. Okay. So as I said before, winning the sweepstakes will. So there are some papers that you see like this that tell you, in 296 steps you can have the shape of the eye bulb. Okay, how about the cornea? How about the retina? How about the optic nerve? How about the optic cells? How about all these things? Okay, so we're talking about the AI estimated that the chances of evolution is 1 to the 10 to the power of 200. And then I will pose you one tongue-in-cheek problem. Let's even assume that our fish became a lizard, okay, or gave birth to a lizard. Male or female lizard? Let's choose. Let's do male. Well, now, if you want the lizard to procreate, you need a female lizard. So you need a second miracle somewhere else with a female now this time. And for those who know anatomy, you know that the female and male reproductive systems are quite different. And not only they are quite different, they are quite matched. It's pretty unbelievable. This needs to happen. So, and we have other things. We have inversion of geological labors. Rav Miller speaks about this. And all these have caused many modifications of the initial hypothesis. We talk about neo-Darwinism. It's not even clear right now if it's fast or not fast. Vestigial organs. Many things we thought were vestigial. But for example, appendix. Appendix was, or tonsils. I had my tonsils removed when I was a kid, and they gave me ice cream for this. And I got a book of dinosaurs as a gift, by the way. I loved it. I loved it. Anyway, so we realized today that this was a big mistake. They serve to protect us from infections, and the same thing on the appendix. And then once there was this doctor coming, and he had this picture here, the baby with the tail, you see, evolution. And then they told him, sorry, doctor, we did it with Photoshop. Well, he was embarrassed, but he didn't apologize because that's still possible, he said. It's still possible. Okay. So junk DNA, this infuriates me. An honest scientist, when he doesn't know, he should say, I don't know. So Japanese scientist found out that there are parts of DNA that don't code for protein. And then he said, oh, this is junk DNA. And that became, in the literature, the junk DNA. Junk means it doesn't serve any purpose. And they figure out now that, in fact, the junk DNA is not that junk. It has other purpose, that they're discovering it. So there's no more junk DNA. And also you can, from a macro perspective, you can think about, some mistakes like having wings. You have wings in birds, of course, in insects, and in mammals like the bats. How is it possible that you have the same mistake happening in 3 different groups? And then, of course, when you look at the books, you see a lot of circular reasonings, cherry picking of data, and one that I like a lot is this. Homology is defined in terms of common ancestry. That's it in one book of one guy. And he, in the same page, he says, an homology is used as evidence of common ancestry. So, I mean, do you notice the circularity here? So the bottom line is there are too many proofs against. An honest science cannot call it a theory. It's a hypothesis. And so far the hypothesis is totally disproved by the facts. Let's go on origin of life thing. This is origin of life. With my friend Moshe, we spent quite some time on it. There is a lot of things. If you want the technical, amazing chemistry, go and look at the videos of Professor Jim Tour and his debate with Lee Cronin and other things like this. And you see basically he sent him to the cleaner. But the point that I want to make is evolution cannot explain origin of life. Evolution is only when you have some life becomes another life. That's what they define. But they want to say evolution explains origin of life, which is total nonsense. And when you look at sentences, oh, Francis Crick, I told you, the guy who stole the microscopy from Rosalind Franklin, an honest man, right? An honest man, armed with the knowledge available to us, can only say that in a certain sense, origin of life appears at this moment to be almost a miracle. Almost. He cannot say it's a miracle. It has to say almost. Right? This is who we're dealing with. Okay. So now I want to go on this. There is a professor at Yale calculated the probabilities that the bacterium, which is one of the simplest life organisms, can assemble itself. And he says it's 10 to the power of 100 billion. Okay? So in the entire universe, we have an estimated 10 to the 80 atoms, roughly. Okay? So I want to do for you this. I will show you 100 zeros per second. Okay? And I want to show you what is a 0.000 to have to 1 over 10 to the power of 100 billion. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay. Calm down. Rega, wait. Okay, by the way, here, I wrote only 600 zeros. It took 6 seconds. Why I didn't write all of them? Because otherwise we would be here together for 32 years. 32 years to write 1 over 10 to the power 100 billion at 100 zeros per second. Okay, so this is impossible. And second, I remember when I was writing in school on it's hors sujet, we say in French. It's out of subject. It has nothing to do with evolution. First of all, it has nothing to do, and second is it is utterly impossible. So let's show some examples of blunders of evolutionists, and this one, I don't want to write his name, I write R.D. Imach Shemo V'Zichro. He has brought so many people on this curve that we saw before, the 24%. He is one of the right responsible. And he just says, biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed. It gives the illusion of design, etc. So there is one called Tim Berra of the same club of these guys. And he made the following. He said, you have a 1953 Corvette, Chevy Corvette. Americans know what it is. For the Israelis, it's a sports car. And then it evolved into the next model a few years later. And then you have the 1968 model. And then you have the 1978 model. And then Tim Berra said that. And I'm going to do it with the professor voice. Okay, ready? The descent with modification is overwhelmingly obvious. This is what paleontologists do with fossils, and the evidence is so solid and comprehensive that it cannot be denied by reasonable people. You know what the reaction of the scientist was? They exploded laughing and they say, what an idiot, this guy. What an idiot. He wrote it. This was in a book to go against creationism. And he said this. Why? And they call it Berra's blunder. Why is Berra's blunder? 2 reasons. One they say and one that I add. Berra's blunder number 1 is that, of course, everybody knows that there's no random mutation between the model of 53 and the model of 68. There are thousands of engineers that worked on the thing, right? Every piece is designed with intelligence in mind. No car is designed by random things. If they do, I suggest that you don't buy it. But the second thing is that even if that was the case, this is an example of microevolution, and we say microevolution is fine. You didn't have a car becoming a helicopter or a bridge. It's a car, it's a car, it's a car. So in fact, he helped us Thank you, Professor Timbera, because now we understand intelligent design is the one that gives the illusion of an evolution and you fall into it. Let's see an example of what evolutionists can do to us. Let's look at the eye. That's I'm going towards the end. Eye is an optomechanical electrochemical sensor. You know, it's lubricated 12 times per minute. And the lens is a lens, has variable geometry. You know, the lenses we put on our cameras, you know, they have the zoom and the grand angle. They're different. You have to change the lens. Here you have only one lens, but it changes geometry all the time. This doesn't exist in the technical world. Retina, 4.5 million cones for 10 million colors, 91 million rods, convert the optical signal into electrochemical message that goes to the brain. Estimated resolution, 576 megapixel. I think the latest iPhone is something in the 30s or in the 40s megapixels. Up to 50 frames per second, 6 synchronized muscles for controlling the eyes, and we have 2 eyes to see in 3D. It's not because one is spare, it's because we can see distance with the 2 eyes. And we see with the brain. Oh, we see with the brain. I want to show you, I want to prove you that. So first of all, an example. They took some volunteers and they gave them glasses that inverted the image. So they saw everything upside down. And when they put the glasses, they were all disoriented like this, but you know, they got used to it and they functioned. And then after they functioned, they took the glasses off and they were again disoriented because now the brain has processed to see things upside down. A more amazing example is this device that they did for the blind people. Basically, it's like a lollipop connected to a camera and converts the image into electrical signals that are sensed by the tongue. And the tongue kind of reconstructs the message. With this thing, after some training, I saw videos of blind people that could play ball with their son or they can drive a bike. They see with the tongue. This is neuroplasticity. I want to ask you, what do you see here? What do you see here? Well, most of you will probably see those 2 people at the edge of the lake. They see the tree. They see some rock. I'm asking you folks, I know we have to go fast because I'm late, but what? Do you see a baby here? Do you see an infant? Or if you don't, I'm going to help you. Look. Do you see now? Do you see the baby sucking his thumb? Amazing, huh? Now that you see the baby, you see the baby. But before you did not see it. Now your brain can see the baby. You see with the brain. Okay. So the eye is something amazing. It's one of the most amazing. Even Darwin said, I fathom the complexity of the eye. It's absurd. It is absurd to the highest level to think that the eye was an evolution. But he said, if we can find sequences of eyes from the complex to the simple, then we could. And in nature, you have simple eyes like the mosquito, and you have complex eyes like camera eyes of humans. But the problem is, the fossils do not show that there was any evolution. You find in the Cambrian explosion both types of eyes. So the fossil record doesn't help on this. So sorry, evolutionists, tactic number 1 didn't work. So they tried number 2. Tactic number 2, listen to this, you are going to faint on the chair. They say, you know why the eye evolved? Because it's imperfect. Eye is imperfect. Why? Because the cones and cells are behind and pointing behind. And in front, you have a bunch of other things. So if it were perfect design, you should have everything in the front to be more sensitive to the light. And the point is they found out why you don't have them in the front, because they have a high metabolism. They consume a lot of blood. If you had them in the front, the blood would cover and you would be practically blind. So the only place to put it is on the back. So that doesn't work. Number 3, they discovered the Miller cells in the front that act like a waveguide, and they improve the vision. And so they help the vision to be so good. So what evolutionists did this time, they said, oh, one biology book, a guy called Kenneth Miller, nothing to do with the tzaddik. There's a tzaddik and there's the rasha with the same name, right? Last name. So he wrote in biology books that, that justifies evolution because there were eyes without the Miller cells, and the Miller cells corrected the mistake. But we have never found an eye without Miller cells. So this is such a sheker Sheker gamur for this. Okay. So this is the picture that we always see. I would propose you a revised picture based on what we see. I think it's the evolution of dumb. So we need to be careful when we think about evolution that we don't go into that thing. And I want just to conclude with an amazing example, just to say, because it's so heavy evolution, I want to go back and conclude with an example from nature that shows the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A butterfly. Butterfly has a specific tree that it likes, and it will deposit eggs on the leaves or under the leaves, hundreds of eggs. And unfortunately, a lot of them will die. It's a very competitive situation. But when the caterpillar will come out, he will be very, very, very hungry. And the first thing the caterpillar will do will eat its own egg shell. That's the first thing. And after that, it will start eating the leaf upon which it was positioned. And after that leaf, it will start eating other leaves. And in the meantime, it's going fat. So it needs to shed the skin a few times. So, and it becomes very voracious. And at some point, when it's really big and finished, it goes under a branch. It makes a silk harness, suspends inside the harness, and sheds the skin for the last time. And in fact, what happens, liquefies itself. Most of it becomes liquid. I'll show you at the end. It's pretty gross, but for science, we have to show those things. And basically, it liquefies itself. And then if you wait, by the way, another thing that is amazing, it will change color to match the color of the branch so that to miminize. How does he know? I have no idea. But then after that, you wait a couple of weeks, I think, and butterfly comes out. Beautiful, right? And in fact, look at this. If you opened one before the end, you would see that inside you have this liquid jelly kind of thing. Okay? That's the butterfly. So we go from a live animal, the caterpillar. It transforms into a chrysalis or pupa. It's a liquid and it's practically dead inside. And then it becomes a butterfly. That is an animal with a completely different morphology than the caterpillar. So hold on a second. You go from live to death to life. Isn't that resurrection? Let me show you an experiment they did that is absolutely fascinating. They took a certain type of moth fly, and when it was caterpillar, they passed a certain odor. And when there was the odor, they gave an electric shock to the caterpillar. Odor, shock, odor, shock, odor, shock, Pavlov conditioning, right? So the caterpillar, when he was sensing the odor, started trembling because he knew the shock would come. Then it became the transformation, and then the butterfly came. When the butterfly came, they decided to pass the same smell, and the butterfly shook. The butterfly had the conscience, the experience that it had as a caterpillar. And it went through the stage of death in between. So you can decide what you want. It sounds like an interesting hint for the resurrection. Today is not the topic, but if you are interested, I have a talk on resurrections and regression under hypnosis and other things like this. That's for another time. So, Toda Rabba, sorry that I took more time. If you are interested, I have a bunch of videos, but unfortunately they are in French. I have some 50 videos on different subjects, and they are on the site of Torah Box. I presented in many places in Europe and in Israel. And I have a few videos also on Torah Anytime, if some of you are interested, and also on Chabad.org. And if you are interested, I try to write Bli Neder every week, something on a specific topic. And it's free of charge. If you want, you can. I will show you later again the QR code and the email. And I publish also. There's a beautiful magazine called the Spring Hill Times. It's amazing because it's only want positive things. You won't find any negative news on it. Only positive things. And I am zoche to publish on it. And there you will find also my articles on this one. Okay, and an important people. Okay, I'm skipping this. I want to go back to this. Rav Yosef Chaim Sitruk. Nature, the modest veil of protection that God spreads over man, so as not to force him to believe in God. So we saw the first approach to get close to God, which is the Torah. We saw the counting of the stars. And then we saw the approach of going the highway to go to Hashem is looking in the creation, the 40 orders of magnitude, the Namibian desert beetle that converts air into water, the Tamar wallaby that can feed two babies at different stages with two different milks. We saw the squirting cucumber, how he spits all the seeds. We saw the 100% efficient light of the firefly. We saw the amazing things that happen into the egg. We saw the amazing cellular processes. We have more processes going on in our body than grains of sands on earth. We, of course, saw the famous quote of Rav Sitkuk. We basically made some cleaning in the evolution. Microevolution, yes. Macroevolution, absolutely not. Origin of life, absolutely impossible. And we saw the eye and how the evolutionists try to attack this from their point of view, and we saw the miracle of the butterfly. So the key message when we need to understand when we see planning, structure, complexity, perfect functionality, synchrony between complex systems and beauty in all aspects of creation, we can only say Marabuma Asecha Hashem and thank him for this wonderful world. And like Rav Victor Miller used to say, and now questions on any subject. But I want to add, with no guarantee that I can answer. Toda Rabba. This is the email that, by the way, works in French and in English. It's in English, it's science613miracles@gmail.com. And in French, it's science613miracles@gmail.com. And here is also the QR code. So, Toda Rabba. Sorry, I went a little over, and now I understand it's time for questions. Toda Rabba.
Thank you very much, Professor. Are you sure you're ready for absolutely any questions?
With the caveat that I can say that I don't answer.
Okay.
Because
fine.
I want to tell you, Shalom, an honest scientist is one who tells when he doesn't know or he doesn't want to answer because he doesn't know enough. That's honesty. Some people, I had one case in one conference in France. One lady asked me something about an RNA, whatever. I didn't understand even what the question was all about. And I said, sorry, I don't know the answer. And she said, but you're a scientist. So I said to her, listen, I'm a scientist and I'm very good at, using complicated words. I could have given you a stupid answer using very complicated words. You would not have known where they come from and you would have thought I'm super intelligent. But I want to be honest and tell you that I don't know the answer. So this is, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Dave, Rabbi Gaddisman, you take the floor. Moderate. If someone wanted to raise their hand or something.
Somebody raise their hand and I'll put you up. You want to stop sharing?
Okay. Stop sharing. Here, stop sharing.
There you go. Here we go. We got Ezra. You can unmute.
We cannot hear you.
What do you say? Can you hear me?
Yes.
What do you say about cytochrome C and this kind of molecular clock?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Sorry.
Moshi?
Right.
Yeah, so I have a question. I've heard it said many times by evolutionists that one big proof for evolution is the fact that we share DNA with other species, that our DNA is like 97% similar to chimpanzees or something like that. So with that evolution, like how do you explain
Well, I suggest you buy.
similarity between the two?
I have an answer for you because I just read it so recently. I said there is a beautiful book called by Rob Stadler, MIT educated, and it's called The Scientific Approach to Evolution. It's a black book written in yellow. And basically, when they tell you it's 97% or whatever, first of all, the initial genome said that it was a huge number, and then they subsequent studies showed that the percentage changed significantly. It's much lower than what you quoted. Number one. Second is when they do this, they only compare the 1.2% of the genome, which is the one that is not junk DNA according to their definition. So when they tell you it's 97% or whatever percentage similar, they don't take the whole thing. They take only small parts, the one that they understand codes for proteins, and the others that they don't understand what it is, they call it junk, and so they don't talk about this. So But I would just say, from a Pashut Pshat perspective, I remember one of my Rebbeim says, the difference that makes the difference. First of all, we're talking about 3.1 billion base pairs, right? So it's a huge amount that there need to be, even if you have a 5% change on this, it's still a huge amount of code that you need to change. Huge amount of code. And let's even assume that you needed only a tiny amount of code to change. It's amazing that the right code changed, and we are so different than monkeys, right? I will never buy that have nothing to do with the monkey. I mean, a monkey is somehow a much stupid thing compared to us. There's no comparison between a human and monkey. It's in my mechila. It's idiotic to put them on the same comparison. They're completely two different things. A monkey will never do quantum mechanics or solve differential equations. Okay, you can train them as much as you want. It will never ever happen. So how come we have such a brain and they don't have? How come we speak and they don't speak? So, yes. Other questions?
There's no other hands up right now.
No.
Brenda, are you looking to put your hand up? Hold on, you can unmute. Hold on. I can tell by the look on her face she wants to ask something. You can unmute. There you go. Talk.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
I just want to know how we can get a copy of this presentation if I wanted to show it to my students back in September.
I usually don't share the presentation itself.
Okay.
I share everything else, but not the presentation, Mechila. If you see the writings, if you subscribe to the writings, there is a lot more detail in there than what I try to convey here. Here we have limited times, and I try to make my best with the time. If you want, and one more time, I want to tell you, Brenda, if any of you is interested that I give a presentation on Zoom or want to invite me to give a presentation or something, I would be very delighted. I don't do this for money. I'll tell you my motivation, by the way. My motivation is that I've seen too many good youngsters going off the derech, leaving the path of Torah, including one of my children. And this has been extremely, extremely painful. And what I noticed is that, of course, it's not evolution that brings them off the derech. It's more emotional things or whatever. But once they go off, they attach themselves to it because they have something to hang on. So I thought that my role as a scientist, that I can do something good for society besides synthesizing nanomaterials, is to help to really understand the beauty of our creation. Because when you look scientifically, you appreciate, and there's no dogma. If you notice that everything I spoke, I'm not a rabbi, I didn't do any rabbi stuff, right? I only showed it to you from a scientific perspective, how to look at things that we see every day and we take for granted. Rav Dessler says, say Tchiyat HaMetim is the ultimate miracle, the resurrection of the dead. But he said, if we look at the resurrection of the seed, when we plant a seed and we get the tree and we get fruits and so on, there's so many miracles, but we don't pay attention because we take it for granted. And what Rav Dessler says, he says, if we were used to resurrection of the dead, but not resurrection of the seed, we would call the first one nature and the second one miracle. The point is, we're not used to resurrection of the dead, so that for us would be a miracle. But resurrection of the seed, we see it all the time, so we don't pay attention. I'll tell you, I had this revelation when I ate my watermelon, and I asked myself the question, how gone? By the way, I want to struggle even more. The watermelon, the white part of the watermelon, how much water content it has? It has 90%. Hold on, it's hard. But you know what? It's because it's a bunch of tiny balloons, sub-millimeter size, but the shell of the balloons of the white is much stronger than the shell of the balloons of the red. So the red, how you can prove this? Put a piece of red watermelon in the freezer. Make it freeze. That water expands. So when it expands, it will break the balloons. take it out of the freezer, put it on the counter, you will not find the watermelon anymore because it will all become liquid because you have popped all the balloons. Fascinating.
I read someplace once that they went into the pyramids of Egypt and they found these vessels with seeds that were 2,000 years old,
Yeah,
and they
that's right. No,
planted them
that's
and they
Masada.
sprouted.
So, Brenda, this one is Masada. In Masada, I speak about this. They found date pits because before they were attacked, they were eating dates. So they were spitting the pits in a jar. They found the jar and they didn't know what to do with it. Those pits stayed in the lab for 40 years. And then there was one scientist who said, why don't we try to plant them? And they tried. And miraculously, it grew
And
a
they
date palm.
sprouted. Yeah.
The problem
Yeah.
was, can you imagine this? There are female seeds and male seeds. The male seeds don't give fruits, but the female seeds do. So they were not lucky. The first one they planted was a male seed, so there were no fruits. Then they planted the second one, and it bare the fruits. And so they could taste the flavor of dates of 2,000 years ago. The thing I'm very upset about it is they didn't invite me, so I cannot tell you what they taste.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Moshe.
Yeah, another question. I saw it quoted from Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. He wrote that evolution has never been proven, but if it were to be proven, that it would actually prove how great Hashem is, that he created the whole creation through a single molecular organism.
Yeah, in fact,
if
there are, if you looked at the chart I showed before that went to 24% of people who don't believe in God, that God had nothing to do with creation and so on. There were two other plots, and one of them was the people who believe that there was evolution, but it was guided by God. There are a lot of people who have this shita. In my opinion, this shita doesn't hold water for the same reasons that we said, for many of the reasons that we said before. You can look, for example, at the fossil records. There are things like this. But there are people who want to believe this. I'm not. If you want to believe, you want to believe. I'm not going to fight it. So.
I want to mention.
In fact, Rav Avigdor Miller. Sorry, I remember one shiur of Rav Avigdor Miller. He said, he doesn't have a problem if people said, but if they said that was God doing it, it would be. It does. I mean, it doesn't make so much sense to me. But if one wants to believe, it's better than be completely atheistic and believe in random nonsense.
So I did speak to the grandson successor about this last week.
Yeah.
Rev Eliyahu Brog, the one that gave us his words of blessing, and what he told me was his grandfather would get upset, would get angry at rabbis who suggested that God could have made evolution as a possibility. He didn't like it.
Yeah.
I even mentioned to him about Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch's quote, and Rav Miller would not have liked it. Rav Rog agreed with me about it. Would have made Rav Miller throw that quote. Would have made Rav Miller throw that.
Okay. I don't understand why, if one can accept that God created everything, why he wants to find something like this. You should go back on my presentation and all the points of contention of the random non-guided evolution and try to see how they would apply to a guided evolution and see where the contradictions still remain.
All right. Moshe again.
Different Moshe, but
Different
I've had the pleasure and the honor of doing quite a lot of work with the professor on abiogenesis. And everything he said is true. It's completely unsupported and unobservable, and there's never been anything that has even come close to producing from non-genetic or non-biological material into biological material. So my question to the professor is, why is it so important that any time that we try to look for a theory of the origin of life, not only does it fail, but it raises like a bunch of other questions that poke holes in other theories? So that's my question.
Well, it fails because it cannot work. I mean, I went fast on it on the anecdotal side, but if you delve a little more, you would see. So, example, when they talk about the Urey Miller experiment, he had a few amino acids in that. But first of all, he never had the left-handed that are important for life, and then he had the few of them were in a mixture of non-functional, not useful, and degrading things. And another thing is we always think that give it time and evolution will happen, give it time. Well, in chemistry, when you give time, things degrade. So you cannot give time. So you have this conundrum, you want time, but you cannot give time because the few things you got that were right are going to degrade. And the mashal would be like saying, I'm exploding a whole town, and then among the whole debris I find one nail, and I say, you see, we can build the car from explosions, right? I think it's an understatement, the example I gave compared to what they want to do with biogenesis. Of course, the motivation is clear, that they are very, very adamant to take God out of the picture because God is very annoying. He is asking us to give an accounting of our actions. There are consequences on our actions. I cannot do everything I want. And so God is annoying. So to get rid of God, let's try to find theories that the scientists can be happy with to take him out. And they work on this. But biogenesis, Moshe, as we saw together, if you really go and you check the work that especially Professor Jim Tour of Rice University has done on this. It's a strange thing. He's a Jew for Mr. J, but he's an amazing chemist. I met him in my office once. I mean, if you look at his impact H factor and number of publications and citations, I mean, he is a Nobel Prize League kind of scientist. And he really sent to the cleaners all the origin of life scientists. He asked them 5 specific questions and no one could answer them. And he had a debate with one of the top them that was honest enough to participate, to take the chance. And he basically, I didn't see the whole thing, but Moshe did, and he basically sent him to the cleaner from what I understand from the report. So that's is just pathetic. The thing that is annoying, so to speak, is that billions and billions of dollars are spent on this. I could ask the ones who give all these grants, we do some nice nanomaterials in my lab. If they can redirect some money in my lab, it would be much, much more useful. Maybe we can find ways to produce hydrogen at much lower price than just wasting our time on something that will go nowhere. Brenda wants to talk again.
Yeah, hold on. R. Turner.
David, I think Brenda wants to talk again.
Well,
Turner.
hold on.
Okay,
Hold on.
fine.
R's up first.
Okay, I didn't see that. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Brenda. Thank you. Firstly, I want to say a tremendous thank you. Your work is remarkable. The emails I receive from you are fascinating each week, and when they come out.
Oh, I put a face now. I didn't know. Okay, now נופלת האסימון. Thank you.
Rabbi Jalowski.
Yes, Rabbi Jalowski. Right.
Awesome. I want to ask you something because I actually work in teaching as well as a clinical social worker. That's my career with a bunch of degrees. And you threw in an idea before that your motivation to do all this is you've seen so many people going off the derech. Am I right, though, in saying that today far fewer people are going off the derech intellectually, rather emotionally? And how can I bring your work down to the average teen today?
I said that before. Maybe I didn't express myself clearly. I said I don't think it's the thing that brought them off the derech, but once they are off the derech because of emotional issues, they attach themselves to it to find confirmation that they're doing the right thing. I agree with you 1,000,000%. I don't think they went off the derech because they read the book of R.D. Marchemont. They go off the derech because they want to go off the derech, because of other emotional issues, that whatever it is, and you know much better than I do on this. But once they are in there, they try to grab everything that can confirm their belief, because their conscience is now burning. I mean, and they're doing something. I'm throwing everything out, and I need to find confirmation that what I'm doing is correct. So when they find this, it's oh great, toda rabah, fantastic. What I'm doing is right. All the scientists agree with me.
That's very comforting because I teach a series called The Wonders of the World, and I've used some of your ideas and Divrei Torah or Divrei Niflot HaBriah, and I've seen it. I've seen miracles happening with students through this journey. I'll throw you a one-liner from my mother. My mother told me that the word miracle, she heard this from an Israeli cab driver. The word miracle is mi rak kel. And I thought that was enlightening. So I appreciate your time. Your work is incredible. Thank you so
when
much.
we say about miracle, you remind me a story that you surely heard, that I heard many times. You have a rabbi, I don't remember which rabbi may be coming. I don't remember which big rabbi was taking a taxi, and the taxi driver was telling him, I have a friend who is dati also, he's religious. And, he was not, he became religious. So what's the story? So that we were together in the army. And then suddenly there is a big snake there, I don't remember which type, that starts one of the board, the ones that strangle, that was rolling, kind of wrapping around him. So he was there, he didn't know what to do, and this snake is kind of, is going to choke him. And then he did completely secular, but they do this, Shema Israel, and suddenly the snake unrolled and went. And he said, and my friend, after that, he became religious. Now he does Shabbat and everything. So the rabbi asked him, he says, and how about you? You saw the whole thing, right? He says, yeah, but it didn't happen to me. It happened to him. Right. That's the second level of tshuva, according to Rabbi Victor Miller, on the story I said at the beginning about the watermelon. Brenda had a question again, I think.
So I had a question when I was in graduate school, and none of my professors were able to answer it. And I still haven't found any solution to this question. But there are two enantiomeric forms of amino acids. And there are two forms of amino acids, there are the D and the L form. I think that all of life is based upon one form over the other.
The left.
Do you hear me?
All the left. I mean,
right,
the left hand.
Right. But if they're both energetically the same, one is not more stable than the other. They're both energetically the same. Why should it be that as a result of random collisions, that only the collisions between one form and the other form should still lead to life? And
because otherwise the protein cannot fold. For protein folding, it should be left-handed.
Right. So to me, this was another proof that, Hashem chose one form over the other to lead to life.
By the way, chirality, to synthesize things with one-handedness, is a huge study. And if you don't know, there is a tragic example in history of medicine, thalidomide. Thalidomide, the story of thalidomide was that they synthesized in the lab, and they didn't know about chirality at the time. So they synthesized the right one. I don't remember if it was the right or the left. But when they started, and they tested it and it worked great. But when they started producing in mass, it came with the other chirality. And that caused the birth defects. So a lot of kids that were born in the 60s or 50s, they missed hands, they missed legs. It was a tragic thing. And all this because of chirality. When you think about this, chirality means left hand, right hand, right? They're the same, but you cannot superpose them. They're different. They're mirror image one of the other. And just because of that, a protein cannot fold. And just because of that, thalidomide can make crippled children. Amazing, right?
So the fact that we have even one protein from this random sea of amino acids that made a protein that made sense, even let's say a 10 amino acid protein, the fact that one protein can form that makes sense from this nonsense is, to me, is absolute proof.
Aforba, kulaba, right? You look in it, the more you look, you find it's just a matter of looking. We have to stop and look. That's what we have to do. And if people start
I remember I once asked my professor this question. He says, well, we have no answers for that and blah, blah, blah. I said, you know what? Ask me. I have the answer. But he didn't want to listen to me.
No, of course they don't want to listen. Okay. You're religious. What? You are a dogma. They call it a dogma. But my rabbi, Rav Ganish, said, if we had the same faith in Hashem as evolutionists have the faith in evolution, we would be ma'aminim min ha'ma'aminim. We would be mamash believers to the highest degree.
So I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Professor, I want to mention that we just made up in the next few weeks, at some point in the next few weeks, this year, the 11 o'clock EST share that we have, class that we have every Tuesday. In a few weeks, we're having a special guest, Rabbi David Wolf, is going to be speaking about the topic of Tcheles and the firmament. And I'm not sure if you ever looked into the Murex trunculate snail. So that's a whole nice subject.
Brenda, I sent you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the rough
I read it.
Shiur on it.
I read it.
Right. Okay. Yes.
When I'm telling you, all right.
And whenever Dave's ready to sign out, I guess we could sign out. And we there is a long 4.5-minute video of Rabbi Bragg, his full words of blessing, Rabbi Bracha. If Dave wants, he could play it.
I'll play it. But
Shalom, there are a couple of questions I see here. A couple of hands. iPhone. And...
I'll go to those questions first.
Okay, sure.
So
Hello?
there you go.
Hello.
Is it possible to get an email address or a way to find other articles by Professor Nissim?
I posted the email before. It's science613miracles@gmail.com. Science613miracles@gmail.com. So if you send me an email, I'll record. You can receive them either by WhatsApp or by email. Your choice.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
And they are, by the way, in French or English or Hebrew. You choose your language, and one of these days I'm going to do them in Italian. Okay.
Go ahead, iPhone 11.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much. This was
Hi.
wonderful. I'm
Thank you.
new and just putting in a request as another participant did about having a recording of this. This was so great. I'd love to share it with my kids.
Is there, Dave, is it saved somewhere on the web or not? I saved on my computer.
It is being recorded. It's being recorded. I will give Shalom a link to where you can share the recording.
Okay.
Is that
So
okay?
Shalom,
That's
you
okay
can
with
then
you?
share the link with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, could I do it? Is there a way I could get the link for this year? Hello?
Yes. Shalom. So, Shalom's gonna say anyone that's on the email list, Shalom will send you the link when it's uploaded, all right?
Yeah, I'll give it to Professor Daniel and we'll take it from there.
Fine.
All right.
Maybe Shalom, you share with your network. I share with the ones that are on mine. So we have overlapping kind of networks. So
absolutely.
But again, if someone wants it, send me an email. Science613miracles@gmail.com.
But he won't have it until later today. It's going to take a little while.
Later, that's fine.
Yeah.
We can wait.
So Professor, first time I've heard your work. It's stuff I've known. It's presented beautifully. I'm going to say I can't disagree with any of your conclusions. I'm highly embarrassed to say that a decade or two ago, I was believed in evolution. I was an atheist and everything, right? So that is the craziest belief system on earth. As a scientist, you know that you're never done learning, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And you said the
Talmid Chacham, we call it in Hebrew, Talmid Chacham, student wise. Because we always learn.
The best scientist says, I don't know when they don't know, rather than nonsense. So one of the things that you have to be careful in science is assuming things. And you made a comment right at the beginning that had me twisting my head. about you were talking about the Hubble telescope and the James Webb telescope. You've never looked into them. You don't know any information about them other than what you've been told. Have you done any verification on the information that you're hearing from them?
They didn't invite me at NASA, so
yeah. So I just want to point out that there's a lot to learn about what I'll call the Hubble and the James Webb deception. Now, your conclusions are not wrong, but by what you're seeing and the numbers that you're using, everything you're saying is true. But using them in your presentation, when you learn about what's really going on with them, I think you'll remove them from your presentation. If any time in the future you want to have a one-on-one with me, and I will show you some things, and then you can take it or leave it, I'm happy to do that. All right. So I'm going to play that video right now, and
I was giving him mussar on it.
Yeah, and here we go. Can you guys hear?
Yeah. Rambam states, "Yesoid haYesoidus v'amud haChochmos is leida sheyesham motzi rishon." The most important thing in the universe is to know that there's a creator. That's the most vital for our success in this world and in the next world. Now we have a principle that the more something is necessary, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides it. For example, air is most necessary. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created that the world is filled with air. Water is very necessary, not as much as air. So there's a lot of water in the world, but not as much as air. Food is less necessary than water, and therefore there's more water, there's less food than there is water. And the same thing is when it comes to our success in Ruchnius. Emunah b'Hashem is the most important thing that we need. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu made that it should be in the biggest abundance. The most obvious thing in the universe is that there's a creator. Godloi v'tuvoi molei olam. Hashem's greatness, His wisdom, and His power, and His kindness fills the world. As someone asked his Rebbe, could the Rebbe please show me where is the Borei Olam? And the Rebbe answered, could you please show me where He's not? Now this is our big success in life. And the most important thing to know, as the Rambam states, that is a creator. However, the Yetzer Hara is busy fighting against it. That's his job, to fight against the truths and to give us room to have free will and exercise our bechira to choose what's right. And therefore, he harnessed the universities and the colleges and the scientists and the governments to push the theory of evolution, which is as silly as could be and is disgusting as could be, lying to the public and belittling our Father in heaven. Now, there probably there weren't too many people who studied the subject for as many years as Rabbeinu Harav Avigdor Miller, Zechariah Levracha, studied it. At one point he stated, I studied the subject for 74 years, and I hate it, he said. It was so disgusting to him. But he was fighting for the honor and the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, telling people, showing people not to be influenced by what they're taught in high school books, what they read in every periodical, which they take as a matter of fact. And therefore, we could call him the scientist par excellence, who showed the world the truth that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the creator, and he mapped the flaw with evolution. How they lied, literally lied, and they lie, and not to admit that there's a creator who they have to be subservient to. And therefore, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to please give us the understanding to incorporate the truth within us, and we should be zoicha to umala kol haaretz deya.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Hey, one more thing I want to say. When I told you I believed in I believed in evolution, it's because that's what I was told, and I never really held its feet to the fire. Right? So,
it was not your David. It was not your fault.
No, I know it's not my fault.
I'll tell you one thing. I went to I gave a presentation to in France something like 6 months ago, and I went to the FNAC, the bookstore there, and they had in big the books of Hardy Marchemont in the middle. I was looking for a beautiful book on the brain, and that book they didn't have. But this garbage, they had it in there in full prominence in front of everybody. And it was, so I wanted to learn it, but at the same time, I didn't want to pay for it. So I decided not to do it. So, but it's not your fault. It's people are, and in fact, you go to school, you want to pass exams, you have to answer the answers that they want. If I answer something like this in the biology course, they would make me fail, right?
Right. Belief is the enemy of knowing. It's the lazy man's knowing. It takes no effort or whatever, right? I live in Connecticut. You can believe it, and you have no other effort. You don't have to do no other work. But if you want to verify it, it can take you a little time, a little effort, right? So we're taught all of these things, and it's only, we have to believe some things, or we'll never get through the day. Right? You have to assume some things, or you'll never get through the day. And we're humans that we want to believe that people aren't lying to us. We have to trust. You can't live in a world with no trust. So we take some things for granted because they're put in front of us again and again and again and again. Our teachers are not lying. They're just memorizers and regurgitators of the information that the Rockefellers put in the textbooks, right? So that's the world that we live in. So, and I know that you see that. So I just ask that you, continue to do good work and verify things without assuming.
Thank you. Toda rabba.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Shalom, you wanna say anything?
Yeah, I'm speechless. All
right.
I guess I made an email that I put on the bottom. It's a little bit hard to spell if I sound it out. Shiuri Hashkapas HaTorah @gmail.com. I put that at the bottom of the flyer. So anybody that wants to join the class that we have together every week with Rabbi Gottesman and Dave, could reach out to me.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Professor.
Right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Shalom. Thank you, everybody. It was really enjoyable. Toda rabba rabba.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Bye.